All right, I am joined by Marc Cunningham of Grace Property Management and Real Estate. Now, for many of our longtime listeners, Marc is no stranger. He's been on quite a few episodes of our podcast. But Marc, I know we got a lot of new listeners out there. Tell us a quick rundown on who you are and who Grace is.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on here. So we've been around since 1978. So my dad's in 1978 decided he was tired of being a school teacher and he was ready to open a real estate and property management company. So he did that in Denver, Grace Property Management back in '78. And so I was kind of employee number one because I was free child labor. So my dad would have me running around painting doors and pulling weeds and serving notices and collecting rent. So that's the world I grew up in and lived in. So today we've got a platform of just under 1,000 doors that we manage throughout the metro Denver area. We've got a pretty good sized team of folks. So we do primarily property management. We do a little bit of real estate sales for our property management clientele, but we help investors. And we really believe, from a conceptual standpoint that it's not some negative relationship between landlords and tenants, but that when you treat tenants well and you treat investors and landlords well, that it's a mutually beneficial relationship. So we come at it from that angle, and we manage mostly single family and small multifamily properties. We do a little bit of commercial as well for some investors, but that's kind of the world we live in.
Yes, and so as far as the what's a rough percentage of like the single family homes? What percentage does that make of your portfolio, would you say?
Oh, probably 80%.
Okay. So vast majority of it.
Yep.
So I've got the $1 million question that I've been asking. I get asked this multiple times a day. How good or how bad is the rent collection? And if we can, let's start with April, since I know that's closed out now. What's the stats on April this year compared to last year?
So when all this stuff hit, right, all the COVID stuff hit, our industry, the property management industry, on both a local and a national level, like property managers were freaking out more than anybody else because they were like, nobody's going to pay rent. What are we going to do? And nobody knew what to expect. We've been doing this a long time. And one of the things that we looked back on historically, and this was so interesting. If we look back over 40 years of data, the number one month we've had over 40 years with the highest rent collection, so meaning lowest delinquency, was the month after 9/11. So October 2001, right after 9/11, when the world went crazy, right? We had more tenants paying than any other month. And I think it's because of the psychological side of, gosh, when things get crazy, people want stability. They want to pay their rent. I want to sit in my house and I'm scared to death. The last thing I want to have to do is move right now. So I'm paying my rent and just sit here. And that's kind of what they did. So we didn't think the sky was going to fall here in the month of April with paying rents. I mean, certainly if people don't have money, that's one thing. But we thought it would be pretty mitigated. And that did prove true. So what we saw over time was on the front end, April rents are due. And we didn't see as high of a collection rate initially as we typically would do. We were off, about anywhere from 10 to 15% on a daily basis to where we would normally be. So, rents always kind of come in, they filter in throughout the month. Not everybody pays on time. When we're collecting rents on 900 tenants, right, it's going to kind of filter in. On a typical month, by the last day of the month, we have 99% of rents collected. That's one of the measuring sticks we use. So, most rents come in on time. 15th of the month, a little more come in. The 20th of the month, a little more come in. By the time we get to the end of the month, all the stragglers and things we've made, we've got 99% in. So what we saw in April was just kind of a delay of that. So instead of having 50% of the rents in by the third day of the month, we were only like at 40%. So it delayed out. So I looked just the other day, as of about 3 days ago, for the month of April, we were at 98% of April rents collected.
So about what, 1% off of last year?
So we're about 1% off of what we would normally be.
Yeah. That is nothing.
Yeah. So we got it all. The thing to remember is it's just taking longer to get. Yeah. So in the past, we'd have it all by the 15th or whatever. So we're still seeing, and we're seeing this industry wide as well as just Denver. You're still getting the rent. It's just taking longer to collect. It's taking tenants longer to get their unemployment checks. It's taking them longer to transfer their savings, what they need to do. So there's a lot more flexibility we're having. We're having to work twice as hard to collect it, but we're still getting it. It's just taking a little bit longer time frame to collect.
That's impressive. So how, and now we are recording this on Friday, May 8th, how is May shaping up so far?
May thus far is looking just like April. So we're seeing some delay on the front end. We don't have as much now as we would hope to have on the 8th day of a normal month. And with the governor's new order, the governor, uh, so on, your listeners probably know this because they live in this world, right? But on the night before May rent was due, we suddenly get this email, hey, there's a new governor's order, executive order, that no late fees can be charged, no evictions can be initiated. And it was kind of out of the left field. It just kind of caught us all by surprise. So that was a big shock to see how do we navigate that? Because we now, as landlords, we have no legal recourse. It's a total relationship play. If a tenant doesn't
Yeah.
want to pay rent, they don't have to pay rent. So we look at this whole experience of what's going on right now through a couple different lenses. If you're a property manager, one way to view what's going on right now is how strong has your applicant selection process been in the past? Meaning, if you're looking at your records right now and you're saying, gosh, 25% of my tenants still haven't paid rent for April. Okay, what I would say is that's a reflection on the screening process you're using to let tenants in. You probably had too low of a screening process. If your screening process was high enough, you should have most of your rents collected. Because in the last couple of years, the economy's been great. Everybody could pay their rent by and large, right? So screening didn't matter to some extent, right? Yeah, everybody can pay, everybody get a job, you can go pay your rent. Well, when things get tough, now we really see the effects of having a tight screening process. So I think that's one thing to be aware of if you're a landlord. If all of your tenants aren't paying rent, it may say more about your lack of screening than about those people having problems.
Okay.
On
That
the front
makes
end.
perfect sense. And as far as just like the general, feel you're getting from tenants, as you said, the communication you're getting, and you guys have a large portfolio. Are you getting a lot of tenants that are, taking advantage of the system and basically giving you and the landlords a middle finger, saying, "Hey, you can't evict me, screw off"? I'm sure there's always some bad apples. So, law of averages says you're probably going to get, I would imagine, some just with your portfolio size. But I'm kind of curious what the feel is you and your team are getting from
So
tenants.
I was talking to a property manager earlier today in California. In California, I mean, if you think it's tough in Colorado with the laws we have, in California, they can't do anything. They can't evict. It's tough. And he said to me, we're talking about people paying rent for the month of May. And he said, what we've seen with people paying rent, and this is what his quote, he said, it's restored my faith in humanity.
Wow.
He said, because my tenants don't have to pay. If they don't want to pay, they don't have to pay, and we can't do a thing about it. He said, but by and large, tenants are paying, and we're experiencing the same thing, and other PMs are experiencing the same thing, right? Tenants, by and large, are good folks, and if they have the money, they're going to pay. Just like most landlords are good folks. And yes, there are a few difficult people that we've had a few people that have said, you know what? I don't have to pay. I'm not going to pay. We've had just a few though, just a handful of those, not much. So you're always going to have some individuals that they're going to take advantage of the system wherever they can do it. Now, long term, they'll get evicted. They're going to have an eviction on their record. It's not in their best interest to do so. But by and large, people are still paying from what we're seeing. So that speaks very well, I think, to the average landlord out there and the average tenant out there, because they're good folks. They really are.
So I want to kind of shift gears here, because the second question I get often from clients is, what's the leasing scene like right now? Right around mid-March, everything kind of started getting put on hold. How is the leasing going?
So every week we have a meeting with our team and our leasing team and our property managers. We call it our vacancy delinquency meeting every Wednesday. We go through all of our delinquencies, which is what we're talking about right now. We also go through all of our vacancies as it relates to marketing. So just this week, 2 days ago on Wednesday, we sat down and our leasing person said this has been the best leasing week we have had in the last 12 months. We've had more activity. We've had more leases signed. And actually, it was interesting because you said it's the best week we've had in exactly 12 months. The other best week was the first week of May of last year. So seasonality, is there seasonality to leasing in Colorado? Absolutely, there is. And right now is typically when the leasing season kind of kicks off. It gets really busy right now. School's out. People are looking to move. So I think you're going to see less people moving. We have seen less people giving notice to vacate because Now's not the time to move, just with all the COVID stuff going on, right? Nobody wants to go have to look for a new house and find a new place. But if you do have to move, and there are people that have to move for whatever reason, or they're planning on moving before all this stuff happened, they're still out there and they're active. So if you have a vacant property and it's not renting right now, don't blame COVID. You need to look at your rental rate. You need to look at the quality of the property, because if it's priced appropriately and if it shows well, you should be getting activity because things are still renting.
And are you, I know it's been a roller coaster the last, 6 or 7 weeks. And so it's very different from renting a property now than it was, 4 weeks ago when we were on lockdown. Overall in your portfolio, are you seeing more rent concessions, more rent drops, or or investors having to do that to get their properties filled?
We're not seeing a lot of rent concessions or drops yet. I think everybody is holding their breath right now, right? To see,
Okay.
hey, what's going to happen? Are we going to have this huge fall off the end of a cliff with rental rates? Are we going to have to do that? This was cool. We're just talking about tenants and landlords working together. So when this thing first hit, one thing we did is we reached out to all of our current landlords. We said, hey, here's what's going on. We don't know what's going to happen exactly with tenants paying rent. If you, Mr. Landlord or Miss Landlord, want to proactively help out your tenant and give them a rent concession, give them $100 off this month's rent, or $50 off, or give them the month free, whatever. Let us know. We're happy to offer that to your tenant. Chris, we had over $25,000 come in to us from our owners who said, you know what, everything from you out, give them $25 off to give them the month free.
Wow.
Just off the top, $25,000. I mean, that speaks so well to landlords, doesn't it? I mean, the fact that these landlords aren't these
That doesn't make the headlines.
No, that doesn't make the headlines.
Go call
right.
the Denver Post and get that story out there.
That's right, because what makes the headline is the one stupid landlord who posts a notice when the tenant has COVID, right? But that's not the norm. The norm is our landlords saying, hey, I want to help. I want to give what I can where I can. And I think we'll see that again now in the month of May. And we stepped up as well. We said, you know what? If you want to waive the rent, we'll waive the management fee. I mean, we want to help. And most landlords want to do that. Now, I don't think we'll see a whole lot of concessions with rents dropping unless tenants really can't pay. But so far, tenants have been able to pay. Now, on renewals, as it relates to the renewal season, if this hadn't happened, if all the COVID stuff hadn't happened, the conversation you and I would be having right now would be, hey, what do we expect to see for an average rent increase rate for the next year? Because everything's coming up for renewal. And I would have said to you, well, Chris, we expect to see somewhere between, on average, 4 to 6% increase in rents to keep up with the increase of taxes and HOAs and insurance. That's what we'd expect to see. Well, that has changed. With the COVID stuff, it's not, you can't get that rent increase right now. It's not appropriate to do it. It's not wise to do it. It's not good PR to do it. And the market may or may not be able to bear it. We just don't know that. So what we're seeing a lot of folks do on the renewals is either keep it flat or just let things go month to month right now. Let's just let things roll out. Let's see what happens. Tenants want flexibility. Landlords want flexibility. So our recommendation to a lot of those landlords is, you know what? Let the lease go month to month for a couple months. Let's see how this stuff rolls out. And maybe you'll have to drop the rent at that point in time. Maybe you'll keep it flat. Who knows? But we are in such a unique time right now, and everything is so fluid and changing so quickly that I don't think it benefits a landlord to lock in a rent reduction. Because what if in 3 months from now we're back to normal, and you're like, darn it, I lost out of 12 months on a renewal because I overreacted when things got crazy. So waiting is not a bad plan right now.
All right. So what do you have? Because I know, you're an investor yourself. You definitely have your finger in the pulse of the market, the rental market. A lot of investors out there are saying, hey, should I wait before I buy another rental property? Is it a good time to buy? Are rents going to drop off a cliff, which it sounds like they're not going to? What's some just general advice you have out there for investors when they're looking at the buy and hold investors? Good time, bad time, about the same time to buy?
If rents haven't fallen off the side of the cliff in the last 2 months, they're not going to. I mean, you can't even buy toilet paper right now, right? That's how crazy the world is. Yet rents are stable, right? Yeah, I mean, my wife sent me to the store. She's like, hey, I'm at the store. I see Clorox wipes. It's a limit of 1. Get over here right now and buy one. I mean, that's the world we live in, right? I mean, I'm hoarding toilet paper. So this is as crazy as things are ever going to get, I think. I mean, if it gets worse, then just pack it up and the zombies are coming, right? So if rents haven't dropped now, then what in the world could make rents drop? It can't get any crazier than it is. So I think it's safe from that standpoint. The other attractive thing to buy is interest rates.
Yeah.
My gosh, I mean, people used to remember when Trump called a couple months ago. He called for the Fed to take interest rates to 0 or less, and everybody laughed. Oh, Trump's so stupid. Why is he saying it? Well, guess what the conversation is now? Interest rates may go below 0. I mean, that's the market we're in, which means, is it a good time to buy? You bet it is. I said we started in 1978. In 1978, if you went out to buy an investment property, you're paying 18% interest. 18% interest. We're now at what? I saw 3.5 on a 30-year fixed.
Yeah, I mean, we're sub 4 for investments now.
Yeah. So from that standpoint, yes, it's very trite. Here's what scares me though, Chris. If you would have told me as a property manager, as a real estate investor, you said, hey, Mark, if you approached me in January, you said, hey, Mark, I'll bet you $10 that in May, there will be a law, a national law that says you can't evict your tenant if you have a federally backed loan for the next 4 months. And there'll be a governor's order that says you can't charge a late fee and you can't evict a tenant even if they don't pay rent. I've said, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. We don't live in a communist country. Get out of here, Chris. You're crazy. But that's happened. That's happened. And if that sentiment, I think, locks in to some extent, because the legislature's coming back, right? The legislative session was supposed to end the day before yesterday. And for landlords, that was a good thing because they were looking at some anti-landlord stuff. If they come back now and they say, ooh, we can't let landlords charge late fees, because that's what they were saying before. If they come in heavy-handed, I think, and this is my personal opinion as well, I think as an investor standpoint, I think, gosh, if I have to worry about the government saying you can't evict your tenant even if they don't pay, that gives me concern. That really gives me concern of, do I want to take my investment money and do I want to put it in real estate in Colorado? Because if it's that unlandlord friendly, then I really have to think twice about it. So I do worry that we will see some landlords when this washes out and prices stay stable, or what, they don't drop. I think we will see some investors say, you know what, this landlording game is not for me. If the government can say my tenant doesn't have to pay and I can't do anything about it, this is not a game I want to play. And I think we will have some people just decide, I'm out, I want to sell, I'm going to go put it back in the stock market. We saw all this money flow out of the stock market into real estate. If this thing isn't handled well by the politicians and they come in too heavy-handed on landlords, I absolutely believe we'll see a 5 to 10% reduction in the amount of rental homes available, because you'll see a lot of these small landlords that say, I'm done. This is too risky for me. I can't risk not being able to evict my tenant if they don't pay rent.
That's interesting. I never thought about the angle before, but yeah. So that could be one of the downsides out of this, huh?
Absolutely.
So Mark, as we close out of this segment, you got any just other data points or journal commentary you want to share with the listeners out there from where you are in the trenches?
Yeah, I think if you're a landlord, as I said earlier, you want to, number one, use this as an opportunity to ensure that your applicant screening process is tight. How tight are you on that? Number one. You want to make sure that you're following current best practices as it relates to showings. That has been a problem for a lot of PMs and a lot of real estate investors. Is, gosh, how do I show my property? I've got a stay-at-home order. I've got a vacancy. How do I get somebody in there to see it? So you want to start looking at, if you haven't done it, look at some technologies. Do video tours. There's things like electronic lockbox showings. There's things like companies that will use agents to show. There's a lot of technology out there.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to make sure you're marketing your property right now, or else you're just not doing anybody any good. But yes, I would look in everything like this. There's always opportunity, right? Our company mantra for 40 years has been follow the opportunity. What's the opportunity today? And the opportunity in the very near future, based upon the craziness, is there may be some opportunities to buy. You may have some of those investors that I just talked about that say, you know what, I'm out. And that's an opportunity for a buyer to come in at great interest rates, have a solid lease agreement, have a solid leasing process, have a solid tenant screening process in place, and pick up a good property. So if you're a long-term investor, I'm still strong on the market.
Great. So Mark, thank you so much for taking time today. And we will definitely be checking with you next month to just kind of get another update from your end on leasing stats, rental data. So thank you so much. And if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you and or Grace Property Management?
Yeah, the best way to reach us is through our website, which is Grace, GRACE.com, rentgrace.com. And they can jump on there. We've got a lot of investor information. So it's not just about, hey, here's why you should hire us, but we have a lot of this type of information that's out there. So whether you're a client of ours or not, There's a lot of good information that will help you as a self-investor manage your own property. We're happy
Yeah,
to
you
share.
do. I mean, you do a great job of putting out, I guess I'll say weekly YouTube videos. I don't know. I think you on their website on YouTube with great content. So that's a great resource people check out. I'll definitely recommend that. Well, Mark, thank you so much. This has been great.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it.